Hello, I am Wallace Kinney, and in case this is your first video to my channel, I am an author. My debut novel, A Dark and Secret Magic, came out last October, and today I'm going to be doing something a little different for me on this channel. I'm going to be doing a reading update, a review of all the books that I have read so far, really what I read in January, and the way that I'm going to be doing that is flipping through my reading journal and also filling it out. So this is kind of going to be like a plan with me, but from the context of reading, if that makes sense. I have an entire video where I go through the setup of this journal. If you want to go ahead and watch that, I'll link it and also put it in the description. So I'm not going to do like a full breakdown of what's in this journal. I'm kind of going under the assumption that A, you already know what spreads exist in here, or B, you just don't care and you're kind of here for the vibes and to know what books I read and what my thoughts are. And there might be some spreads that I have to save for later because I'm currently on a trip right now. I'm on a writing retreat, and so I don't have access to all of my tools. This is going to be potentially a chatty and maybe long video. I have no idea because I've never made a video like this, so this is all new for all of us. Okay, I'm just gonna flip through to see if there's anything I need to update. Okay, yes. First of all, I need to update my reading tracker, which I clearly have not done in quite some time. So let's pull out the pens that we need. Oh, wait. Oh, I think it's that other one. We need a purple. And we need a green. Here it is. Okay. All right. We're gonna work kind of backwards because clearly I don't fully remember. Today's the 10th, which means 2 days ago I finished a book. I finished The Three Body Problem, but I'm not going to talk about that in today's update. At least I don't think so. I'll save that for February because I finished it in February. So if today's the 10th and I finished it 2 days ago, then that means I finished on the 8th. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. I also finished a book. I know for a fact I finished a book on the last day of the year because I really snuck it in there. And then I know I finished a book somewhere along here, so this isn't going to be perfect, but I'm pretty sure I finished it on the 28th, just a couple days before I finished this one because I was really trying to sneak them in. And I know that this book that I finished on the last day of the year, I started 2 days earlier. And I continued to read it on this day because I was trying to sneak it in. I also started The Three Body Problem at some point right here. Have I started? Well, I started a book today on the 10th. So we can go with that. I did not read it all yesterday. Okay, I might have to come back and finish, fill that in as I keep going. I am gonna try harder this month to keep track of what is going on. Okay, I do know that I have been reading. I was reading The Three Body Problem almost every day this month. That's the wrong color. So I'm just gonna go with a big stretch of continued here. Because I was listening to the Three Body Problem audiobook, and every time I got in the car, I would turn it on. So, and then I finished it on a plane a couple days ago. So I'm pretty sure I drove every single day, and if not, oh well, I've messed up just a little bit, but that's okay. So, okay. Now we're gonna fill in this section. I started filling in my books and filling in the spreads before I realized I kind of wanted to sit down and do all of these together for a video. And so we have some of these already. So what are some of the books that I finished in January? Well, I finished Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands, which I actually talked about extensively in my video about setting this book up. So I'm not gonna go into this one too much. If you wanna know my thoughts on it, you can go watch that video. I also finished Remarkably Bright Creatures, I finished a romance novel called The Duchess, and I think like the subtitle is The Scandalous Ladies of London or something like that. I finished a nonfiction book called Goblin Mode, and then I also read 3 other books, or I should say I finished 3 other books in January. I actually started quite a few more, but some of them I struggled with, so I'm still working on them. And some of them just took a long time, like the 3-body problem. So one book that I read, which we're gonna fill in now, is another nonfiction book called Yule. And the author is, let me look. Oh, it just says Llewellyn's Sabbat Essentials, Rituals, Recipes, and Lore for the Winter Solstice. There's a whole series of these books for every single one of the Sabbats or Sabbats. Like there's one for Samhain, there's one for Beltane and Imbolc, Ostara. I only have the one for Yule because it's a research guide for me. It was a helpful guide for the book that I'm currently writing, because the first book I wrote, A Dark and Secret Magic, is about Samhain and Halloween, and this next book I'm writing is not going to be as deep into it as the first book I wrote as A Dark and Secret Magic, but it will have a Yuletide setting. So we're just gonna, oh, that's not a good pin. We're just gonna put Yule, just as a reminder. And then this is interesting. The second book I read, or I guess the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th, 6th book I read this year, this month in January, wow, cannot speak right now, was a collection of short stories called The Return of the Light by Carolyn McVicker Edwards, 12 Tales from Around the World for the Winter Solstice. So again, this was a book that I was reading as research for my next novel, but I can't make it gray because gray is what I'm reserving for nonfiction and reference books. And this was an anthology of short stories. So I'm gonna look at what I have on me in terms of color. I do think short story anthologies are gonna be a rarer read for me this year, although maybe not, but I'm gonna go with a color that I don't think I will feel like using a lot. And so I'm gonna go with this kind of pretty bright yellow. I don't think that's what this is. I think for literary fiction, yeah, I think I use this kind of pale peachy orange. So we're gonna go with a bright yellow. And that's nice because the book title is called Return of the Light. Oh, that's actually not as bad of a color as I thought it was gonna be. Well, now I'm kind of sad that I used it on such a rare genre because that's a nice color. That's okay. Maybe that's just a sign to me to read more anthologies of short stories or to write them. Chocolate short stories, anybody? I really should get back into those. I really enjoyed doing those. All right, and we're just gonna write Return of the Light. Okay, we got it. Just eked it in there. And then finally, the final book I read was another romance, although it was a romantasy. And I'm gonna let you guys guess what book it was. Which, if you watched my video about my Pinterest board for January, my January review, by reviewing my Pinterest board, you're gonna know. You're gonna know what book it is. You can still guess if you did not watch that video, because just think about me. Think about me. What would I have read? That says A Dark and Secret Magic. I read my own book. I listened to my own audiobook this month. And it was such a wonderful experience. I did it because somebody I knew said that they were listening to it, and so I decided to also listen to it and kind of was trying to view it through their eyes. And I was oscillating between being horribly embarrassed and being very, very proud of myself. So those are the books that I finished in January. Total of 7, I believe. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which if we flip back to this page, I have a goal of reading 90 books this year. So I don't think I'm on track. I think, well, yeah, I think I would have needed to read 1 or 2 more in order to stay on track. All right, this is the review library. Once again, we have already pre-filled out for several of the books. I am gonna write down Yule here, but just like how I didn't rate Goblin Mode, I'm not giving Yule a rating because it's nonfiction. And I should talk about this. I have a very specific rating system, which I'm so sorry to keep being like, go watch this other video. But I have an entire video titled Why I Never Rate Books 5 Stars. And it's because I assign specific meanings to each star, to what it represents. And then from there, I determine my overall rating. And because of that, I also never rate books on Goodreads or anything like that because I know how important it is for authors to receive high ratings. And for me, I will highly, highly recommend a book if it's 3.5 stars. To me, a 3.5 star rating is a slay. It is a big endorsement. But I know that on sites like Goodreads, it's actually kind of considered middling or maybe not so good. Out of just politeness, I feel like because my rating system is so skewed to be quote unquote harsher, I don't rate on Goodreads. So if you see a book here that has a low rating, please don't believe that that means I didn't enjoy it, because that's not true. I'll just put a little question mark there because I don't have a last name for them. And this is the page that I will eventually want to print out and stick on the book covers. We also have Return of the Light. I also really want to work on my handwriting because it is not so cute. By Carolyn Edwards. I'm also going to hold off on reading this because it was 12 folk tales, not even short stories. I should make that clear. It was an anthology, but not of short stories. They were folk tales, literally lore and legend from ancient people about their winter solstice myths. So I'm not going to give that a rating because it also doesn't apply. My rating system doesn't apply to this type of book. My book, A Dark and Secret Magic. By author, how fun is that? Wallace Kinney. Okay, let's go through how I would rate my book. Wow, actually no, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait until we get to my book's spread and then I'll come back and put in a rating for it. Okay. So our next stop are the main spreads. Like I said, I've already gone over Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands by Heather Fawcett in a previous video, which if you want to see all my thoughts, you can either just pause and see the snapshot here, or you can go watch that video to get the in-depth review. Then we have Goblin Mode by Michaela Coyle. I started it on January 4th and I finished it 2 days later on the 6th. It's nonfiction and it's more of a lifestyle book. It was published in 2023. It has a 207 page count and I had it in hardcover. Did I enjoy reading this book? I put halfway yes. Would I recommend this book to a friend? I put mostly no, although I guess now I should say yes because I have recommended it to Lindsay Puckett. So I'm gonna redirect here and emphasize this box. So that way I'll be like, yeah, this was the answer. This was the right answer. Yes, I would recommend it to a friend because I did. And then would I like a series of this book? No, but again, that didn't feel like a super applicable question because it's nonfiction. So what did I like about the book specifically? I felt it was quite cheeky. I really enjoyed all the arts and crafts suggestions that the author gave that are reminiscent of someone entering into or living in goblin mode. And there were some fun internet inside jokes that made me laugh. And then what did I like least about this book? I just felt it was very surface level, even as someone who is not part of the Goblin Core subreddit. Just from my existence on the internet and from being on the internet, there was nothing really talked about in this book where I thought, oh, that is cool, that is new, that's neat. Like, it was all stuff I'd already seen before, and it repeated itself a lot. So not only did I see stuff before reading the book, within the book, I'd seen stuff before within the book itself. And also, I felt like it contradicted itself a lot. Overall cover design, I gave 5 stars because it reminded me so much of my own cover. Writing style, I gave 2 stars because it's nonfiction writing, and so I didn't really find anything especially artistic about it. But again, 2 stars is not bad for me. It's just not noteworthy, but it didn't need to be for what it was. Like, it did what it was trying to do. And then I obviously didn't rate for story and plot or for characters because, again, that doesn't make sense. Perhaps if I do start reading more nonfiction books, maybe what I should do is reassign these for 2 new elements that I determine. Like, does it prove its thesis? Or like, instead of story and plot, like thesis and argument. And then I don't know what I would put for characters, but I do like this idea of coming up with new categories for these otherwise irrelevant categories. And then notes, I said some elements were odd and delightful, inspired to shape a main character of this sort of vein. Oh, I did think about that. I was getting inspired by the idea of having a kind of goblin-y type character because I do find that to be such a delight. All right, this was The Duchess by Sophie Jordan. This was the like full-on romance novel that I read. I started it on January 13th and I finished it 2 days later on the 15th. It was a historical romance published in 2024. Its page count, because I listened to it on Audible, I put the time it took me to listen to it. So it's a 7-hour and 37-minute read. But again, I listened to it on 1.5 speed, so I'm sure it took me a little less time than that. But that's the length of the audiobook. Did I enjoy reading this book? Again, it was a halfway yes. Would I recommend this book to a friend? I said no. I don't remember why I said no. And then would I like a series of this book? And I said unsure. What did you like most about this book? I said it was a good toe dip back into historical romance. I used to be obsessed with historical romances. There was a January of 2023, I read 30 historical romances in that month, basically one a day. Crazy. And if I'm trying to read 90 books this year, I need to be bringing that energy to the table. I also loved Mary Jane Wells as the narrator. She's my favorite audiobook narrator of all time. Her and Abigail Reno, because Abigail Reno is my audiobook narrator. I love her. And I loved that the main male character was Welsh. I typically really enjoy the romance novels where the main character is Welsh because I really, and when Mary Jane Wells is the one narrating it because I love her Welsh accent. What did I least like about this book? It wasn't romantic enough. I'm remembering that I felt there was too much physicality too quickly. There wasn't enough pining or enough yearning. And it was way too much about how attracted the 2 people were to each other and not enough about how much they liked each other as people. So anyway, that's just me. And also the ending had huge stakes, but was resolved blindingly fast, even for historical romance, which is true. Historical romances do tend to wrap themselves up quite nicely with a bow, but this one was just like the conflict was introduced 97% of the way through the book and it was resolved 98% of the way through the book. So that's just not a pacing I enjoy. Cover design, I gave it 3. It was just very basic. I mean, I typically don't like it when there are people on covers, so but I didn't have any also glaring issues with it. So I just gave it 3 stars. Writing style, I gave 3 stars. Again, totally decent. There wasn't anything about it that made me think, ugh, this is a tough read just because of the voice of the author. Story and plot, I just gave 2.5 stars. And characters, I just gave 2.5 stars. And that is going into kind of the fact that I didn't think it was romantic enough. The overall kind of pitch line for it, I'm terrible at pitch lines, so actually I'm not going to try and do a pitch line. But basically, the gist of the story is that this woman was married to a terrible man who was a duke, and then he has died, and she's just about to exit her year of mourning when the current duke and his 6 unmarried sisters move in, and she's expected to go to the dowager house out in the middle of nowhere, England, but she's still young, she's in her early 30s, and she still wants to, enjoy life in society and in London, and so she makes a deal with the current duke that she will help his very rough around the edges sisters integrate into society and find good marriages if she can stay for a little while, and then of course they fall in love. Here's why I gave story and plot 2.5 stars, because really I think that's a great setup. That's a great concept, but we don't actually focus on it too much. The amount of time that we spend with the younger sisters, the amount of time that we spend, okay, there's a dog barking, and this could go on for hours. This dog barks so much. Okay, I'm gonna pause filming for right now because the dog will, like, just trust me, this dog's gonna bark for a long time. And that's good because it can give me an opportunity to also charge the camera. I will be back, and I deeply apologize if there is a shift in the lighting because it is getting late afternoon and the sun might set soon. So, all right. Okay, I am back. It is fully the next day because the sunset and the lighting was too weird. So, but I'm back, and that's what's important. I did want to also say this final box for the Duchess, and it says there is a book earlier in the series. I believe this was book 2 in the series, and the earlier book was about a character that I say I'm not sure I want to read that one, but if the next book is about the stepmother, I will think about picking it up, which, yeah, there was a very intriguing side character in this story. Okay, this is my rating page for Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. I started it on the 4th of January and I finished it on the 19th. I listened to the audiobook. I said its genre is literary fiction. It was published in May of 2022, and the audiobook length is 11 hours and 16 minutes. I said I did enjoy reading the book. I would recommend this to a friend. And would I like a series of this book? No, but that's because this book is a standalone story, and I feel like a series would not add to it at all. So what did I like most? Marcellus. Oh, I was thinking about this last night. I was like, I should probably try and do my pitch line for the book before I go into all of this detail. So Remarkably Bright Creatures, I was on Audible when I was in Florida earlier in January, and it just was a book that got recommended to me, and I thought, and literally was saying, oh, a woman and an octopus form a friendship. And I thought that concept was so delightful, so I downloaded it. And now it's been one of those things where I'd never heard about something, and now that I've heard about it, I hear about it everywhere. I feel like everybody's talking about this book. The kind of overarching theme of the story is that the woman is old. She's in her, I think, late 60s, maybe early 70s, and her husband has recently died from cancer, and her son drowned about 30 years ago. And there's kind of a very light mystery, I would say. This is not a mystery book, it's a literary novel. It's more of a study of the characters. And but one of the most delightful elements of the story is that there is a narrator who narrates in third person point of view for the old woman and then this young man who is also a character named Cam. But then there is a separate narrator for the audiobook that narrates in first person POV for the octopus, whose name is Marcellus, and he is absolutely, in my opinion, the best part of the book. I also really enjoyed the exploration of aging alone. This book I found to be quite poignant and sad, but I did enjoy just being in the headspace of the main character of the novel as she's kind of entering what she calls the last chapter of her life. I just think that's a really interesting thing to explore, and it's not something I have explored very much in my reading. A lot of the books that I read, the main characters are quite younger. I really enjoyed this setting. This takes place in Washington State in the Pacific Northwest, but in the summertime. Just a very maritime aesthetic. I felt like I could really feel myself walking around the town that this book takes place in. I think the author did a good job of making the world feel quite alive. And then also that other character who we get narration from, Cam, that young man, I enjoyed his character arc. I found his character growth satisfying. But what did I like least about the book? It was very hard to be in Cam's head for the majority of the story. He's You know, he's an adult, but he acts like a child. He has a very kind of whiny interior narration. He very rarely takes responsibility for his actions and his choices. And I'm not saying that to critique the writing, because that was the point. That this character has gone through some stuff as a child, and he's meant to kind of be in a state of arrested development, but it still was very hard for me to be in his head. And so I think that's why it took me over 2 weeks to read this book, was because I did not enjoy his sections of the book for the majority of the audiobook. It was also very, very sad. Even though I think the ending is meant to make you feel uplifted, I just was left with this kind of heart pang, a sourness in my throat. Not like a sourness, like a bad taste in my mouth, but just a longing, a yearning for things to be happier. But I do appreciate, you know, that's not always how things are. And again, so this is not a critique on the choices the author made. I do believe this was incredibly intentional. I just typically go for books that, you know, don't explore things on as deep a level as this book explored things. I also said something I didn't love about this book, but there were a lot of conveniences for a non-magical realism or fabulism book. I guess other than Marcellus, I mean, he is a fairly magical element. Other than that, the book felt very straightforward, and it's like grounded in reality. And so to have these conveniences, oh, you just happened to talk to this one person in the town who had the exact information you needed to have, that happens so frequently. And I know it's a small town in the book, but it happens so frequently that it just felt too convenient. And I'm gonna be real, there were a couple times that I was rolling my eyes like, oh, of course, that was convenient. And then I also wrote that it felt a little bit white carpet, which is just a shorthand phrase that I use when something really saddens me, because it just makes me think of an empty room with a white carpet, where they're like in a house where there's no life or happiness. It's just this blank space, but blank space in a desolate kind of way, and in a almost giving up of hope kind of way. It's such a deep feeling that I have that I almost can't put it into words just off the cuff. And so this is my offhand for it, that it made me feel a little bit white carpet, which comes back into the idea of it being very sad. So those were the things I liked least about the book. The cover design, I gave 3.5 stars, which I'll put up a picture of the cover. Also, is this book on camera? I can't tell if I'm fully aligned, if I'm aligned well or not. I think I am. Anyway, sorry, I have a very unusual camera setup right now because I don't have my tripod with me because I'm traveling. But I thought the cover design was nice. It's like a artistic, like watercolor, and I think it's quite pretty. I thought the writing style was lovely. That's why I gave it 3.5 stars. The story and plot, I gave 4 stars because I truly found the story to be so unique to me. And also, Marcellus, he just makes the book in so many ways. And so I feel like Marcellus earned this 4th star. You know, without Marcellus, it would have been maybe a 3-star plot, but he made it the 4 stars. And then the characters, I only gave 2 stars, and this is mainly, I mean, I don't actually know if that's fair, because all of the characters did feel realistic to me. So I actually don't know if that's fair. Maybe I should give, I think I'm gonna, because just because I didn't like being in Cam's head doesn't mean he was a bad character. I think I'm gonna give this 1 more star. Because that to me feels more fair, because a 2-star rating on characters does to me indicate that there was a flatness to them, or I felt like they didn't have appropriate flaws and appropriate attributes. I mean, all of these characters were incredibly flawed, but in such a great and human way. And just because it was hard for me to tolerate some of them doesn't mean that the characters themselves are poorly constructed. So that's why I'm giving them 3 stars. And for notes, I just wrote that I think if this was a movie, I would love it, but I'm not sure why as a book, I'm more neutral. So I thought, yeah, that's an interesting concept as well. All right, and now we are in the part where I need to fill in my information. And I had originally thought that I was going to do this all on camera, but I do wonder if that would be kind of boring, and maybe a better setup is if I do pre-fill these in and then just go through it. That's what I'm going to do for now, but feel free to leave me a comment below to tell me that you would prefer to see me write everything down. I just feel like if I do that, there's going to be a lot of dead air where I'm just sitting and thinking, and of course I can edit around that, but if I'm going to edit around it, I might as well just do one massive time skip and come back when it's all done. Also, if you've made it this far into the video, leave me a little, is there an octopus emoji? If there is an octopus emoji, leave an octopus emoji, or maybe just like a fish emoji or something related to the sea, and let me know what book you read in January that you most enjoyed, and I'll be back. All right, I have returned and I have filled out my other 3 books that I read this month. So we're going to start with the Yule story, which when I was looking up some of this information, I found out that Llewellyn or Llewellyn is a publisher. It is not the author, but alas, I still wrote it down. I started this book on January 20th and I finished on the 28th. It's a nonfiction book published on October 8th of 2015. Normally I don't get so specific with the publication date, but this is a special day because it's also the day my book got published, October 8th of last year, so I wanted to write it out in full. 240 pages, and I read it in paperback form. I said I did enjoy reading the book, I would recommend it to a friend, and I would like a series of this book, which is great because it is a series. As I said earlier in the video, this publisher put out one of these books for each of the main holidays on the Wheel of the Year, and I do see myself purchasing and reading the others. And I really enjoyed, which I think I wrote here, how informative this book was about Yule specifically, and I can't wait to pick up some books on the holidays that I'm less familiar with, like Ostara and Imbolc. What did I like most about this book? That it was highly informative. I took so many notes because, again, I was reading this as a research book for the story that I'm currently working on. So this was highly informative. I felt so good after reading it. I felt like I had a lot to infuse into this story to make it feel alive and part of the traditions. I also enjoyed that it pointed to other sources. This is going to make it helpful for me to seek out even more research to read, and I always enjoy a book that cites its sources well and is like able to defend the claims that it's making. And it was fairly nicely written, easy to follow along. As for what I didn't like about the book, I really sat here and I couldn't think of much, but I did finish this a while ago. And this is one of the reasons why I'm thinking actually for these videos, I think I am gonna fill them out as soon as I finish the book, because then these kind of prompt bubbles will be fresher in my mind and I'll be able to sit and actually think about if there was anything I didn't enjoy. Off the top of my head, I really can't think of anything. I'm not sure I would have written anything down if I filled this out the day I finished this book, but I think for the sake of actually accurately capturing my thoughts about the books I read, I want to fill out these spreads before I film the video, but I do enjoy the like tactileness of, you know, playing around with my markers and talking to you guys as I bubble things in. So there are, oh my God, not the dog. Anyway, there are other areas in this book in which I can leave for the filming of these videos in the future, but this part specifically I'm gonna fill out beforehand. Okay, cover design, I just gave 2.5 stars. It's a really simple cover and it's, I don't know, just nothing to write home about, and so 2.5 stars means I'm like completely neutral about it. So 2.5 stars. Writing style, also 2.5 stars. Maybe I should up this to 3 because I did say it was easy to follow along. And I feel like it's actually quite hard when you're writing about a like informative topic. It can be easy to just be too reliant on your own expertise and just really go deep into it and then not actually take into account that your audience might be new at this and might need you to be communicating in a less intense way. So I'm actually going to up that to 3 stars because even though this is a topic that clearly the author knew a lot about, they communicated in a very effective way, and I think that is commendable. And then for my notes, I just wrote that I was fairly physically abusive to this book. I dog-eared and highlighted to my heart's content. I would show you, but I didn't bring it with me on this retreat. But yeah, it's very dog-eared because I know that this is my second note. I'm going to frequently return to it as a reference book for sophomore. Sophomore is just, it's about you. It's what I call my second book because that's going to be my sophomore book. And yeah, it's going to have a place on my desk for the majority of this year, this Yule book, because I'm going to turn to it often, I think, while I'm working on About You. All right. Here's the big one, you guys. Dark and Secret Magic, my own book. Oh my gosh, this was such a funny spread to fill out. It was so surreal filling this out a couple minutes ago. So, A Dark and Secret Magic, what is it? It is a romantasy novel that I wrote. I call it my love letter to Halloween, but my elevator pitch for it is that a hedge witch gets into autumnal hijinks the week before Halloween. She unravels family secrets, she flirts with a necromancer, and she faces off against an immortal trickster god. And I basically wrote it for anybody out there who is a huge Halloween fanatic and who wishes that Hallmark would make holiday movies for Halloween, not just for Christmas. So that is my pitch for it in case this is your very first video of mine. And I'm the author, Wallace Kinney. I started listening to this on the 25th of January and I finished on the 27th. It was published on October 8th of 2024 last year. I listened to the audiobook, which is 11 hours long. Did I enjoy reading this book? Yes, I did. It was very surreal, but very enjoyable. Would I recommend this book to a friend? Yes, because that's my job to recommend this book to a friend. It's my job to try and get sales on this book. So I recommend this book to everybody. And would I like a series of this book? I said unsure. I wrote this book as a standalone, and the book I'm currently working on, About You, is in the same universe as A Dark and Secret Magic, but it's completely separate from Adasm. So I don't really count it as like a series of this book. I wrote Adasm as a standalone, as I said, but I've had so many people reach out to me and be like, this can't be it. This can't be the end of Kate and Matthew's story. Please tell me you're working on a sequel. And so I'm just like, it's in the back of my mind. I don't know. That's why I'm unsure. What did I like most about this book? I love that it's a Halloween bonanza. I really wanted this book to be like Halloween personified, but happy Halloween personified, not spooky, scary Halloween. Like a happy pumpkin carving contest type of Halloween. I loved the audiobook narrator. Abigail Reno is like, she's such a professional. She's so incredible. I love the work that she did on this book. It was so fun listening to my book through her voice. The book is extremely aesthetically pleasing. I was very proud of myself listening to the audiobook and just realizing how well I actually did manage to accomplish my thesis, which was write a book that would get you ready for Halloween. And I read this book in the middle of January and was like, ooh, I can't wait for September, October. And then finally, the thing I like most about this book is that it's mine. So that makes it special no matter what. What did I like least about the book? I said it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing to listen to it under the context of knowing that somebody else I knew was listening to it at the moment. And so there were just moments where I'd be like, oh, I wonder what they think about that. I wonder what they think about that. I'm also embarrassed that there are some typos in this story or like just general inconsistencies. Now, this is another thing to go to Abigail Reno's incredible professionalism. She actually caught several on her own and fixed them as she narrated. But there were still a couple that like I wouldn't have expected her to realize were things that were wrong. And so I still heard them though, because I know the story, like as its author, I know that something is wrong when it should have said one thing, it said the other. But after the book made the USA Today bestseller list, my publisher did a reprinting of it and those typos should be fixed now. So that's hopefully not a problem for anybody who buys the book in print, but the audiobook still has some of those issues. And then I just wrote the word befuddled because the way that word is in every other chapter. I'm not even joking. I think I must have used it at one point as a way of, instead of using the word confused, And then I was like, oh, I like that. And then I would always use that instead of the word confused. Like, Wallace, just say confused once, like every so often. You don't need to be this deep about it. Anyway, befuddled. I like take a shot every time you hear befuddled in a dozen. So my general ratings: cover design, 5 stars. You will never convince me otherwise. I think I have the best book cover in the entire world. I'm obsessed with it. I love it. Alcove Press did exactly what I wanted them to do for the cover. They gave me a work of art. It's beautiful. It's immaculate. Writing style, I was originally only going to give myself 2 stars, but then I thought that wasn't very nice. So I'm giving myself 3 stars. I definitely think I have areas for improvement, but I do think it's an easy read, which going back to this book, right? That's my criteria. If you're able to communicate in a way that it's easy for your audience to follow along, I feel like that means you deserve at least 3 stars, because it's not just a neutral thing. I think that is an accomplishment when you're able to write something that an audience can fall into. And I have had a lot of people say how quickly they finished the book and how much they enjoyed my writing style. So I'm going to choose to believe them, and I'm giving myself 3 stars. Story and plot, I'm also giving myself 3 stars. Again, this is not a bad rating. This is an overall positive rating. Anything up higher in here, I think there has to be a level of intricacy and depth that I wasn't even trying to do with Adasm. So in a way, this rating system is a little skewed. I wrote the plot I wanted to write, and I wrote the story I wanted to write. So from that perspective, I achieved what I wanted to achieve. But I don't think I did anything. I didn't reinvent the wheel. I didn't do anything like really experimental and interesting. So that's why I'm not giving myself a higher rating. And then characters, I gave myself 3 stars, and this is probably my most generous rating. I think I actually deserve maybe 2.5, because my characters are a little one-dimensional. No, they're a little 2.5 dimensional. Like I was saying with Remarkably Bright Creatures, characters should be flawed. Characters should have arcs. And I do think that my main character, Kate, is flawed, and she has growth and has a very clear character arc. But the main male character in the story, Matthew, I would say he doesn't. He's pretty much just perfect. And that can be interesting, but also it can be not so interesting. And I do wonder sometimes if in this story it veers more into the not so interesting category. So that's fine. Anyway, we're gonna move on. And for notes, I just wrote that what a joy and privilege to be able to experience this, because that's so true. I feel incredibly lucky to have a book published. So those are my thoughts on Dark and Secret Magic. I guess I should go to the back now, or to the front, excuse me, and actually give it its official rating. This is funny. Okay, so let me get a pen. Okay, so my rating system is, it gets half a star for decent writing. So automatically we get half a star. A full star would go to a book like Pride and Prejudice or something like that, and I'm not out here comparing myself to Jane Austen, so that's why I'm getting half a star. In my rating system, the second star I'll assign is regarding the characters. I gave myself, what did I give myself? 3 stars for these characters. I'm going to translate that to, within this system, another half star. So we're at a full star already. My third opportunity in my rating system is the ending earned, and are there any cheap character deaths? I'm going to say my ending is earned. I think I did a decent job, and please correct me if I'm wrong if you've read the book and you have other opinions, but I think I did a decent job of foreshadowing, building up. There are some conveniences, but we're in a world of magic, and so it feels a little more, I feel a little more forgiving of that sort of thing. The book is meant to feel magical, and so conveniences are supposed to feel magical. And I don't think that there are any cheap deaths at the end, but I do think I could have done a better job. I do think my ending could have been better paced. I think, I don't know. I'm gonna give myself half a star for right now for ending. And I can always choose to adjust it, but I think that's solid still. See, I'm like giving myself just a solid like B+, you know, that's what's happening right now. My fourth category is, can this book hold my attention? And I'm giving this a full star because I have read this book so many times. Like in 2024, when we were getting ready for publication, I had to read this book 6 or 7 times in the span of 3 months. And I mean, by the end of that, I was like, get it away from me. And so the fact that then just about 6 months later, I can listen to the audiobook and or yearn for it when I have to stop and be like, I want to know what happens next, even though I literally wrote the thing, and finish it in 2 days. That's giving a full star. So we're up to 2.5 stars, which is exciting because I also am pretty sure I'm going to give myself a really good rating on the last section. And the 5th category in which I award a star is je ne sais quoi. And this basically allows me to award a star for whatever I want. Now, I typically break this up into 2 sections. I have half a star for this je ne sais quoi element of whatever I want, and then the second half of the star goes to the story if I feel like it's going to stay with me for a really long time, if it has a profound impact on my personality and my life. And because it's my book, well, first of all, if I just read this book off the street, it would get that half star for je ne sais quoi because it's a book about Halloween. Like, I'm giving it that. For the aesthetic, for the Halloween, for the concept, for the plot, I'm giving it half a star because that's so fun. And then it's also getting a half a star for its effect on my life, because I wrote this book. It was my debut novel. It became a USA Today bestseller. It helped me, make a deal with my publisher for a second book. I almost want to say I don't think any other book will ever have the impact on my life that this book, that A Dark and Secret Magic, has had on my life. So it's getting a full star for that, which means my full rating for my book is 3.5 stars, which is actually so good. It's so much better than I expected. The first time I ever rated one of my own books that I had written, I think I gave it 2 stars using this system. So yeah, wow, that's exciting. I'm like actually very pleased that I ended up with a good rating for that. Right now I have it rated as much as I have Map of the Otherlands rated, which totally checks out because I love this book. I love this series. So yeah, and there is a part of me that's just like, what if I just gave myself the full star for the ending? So we'll say that my rating, I never do like 0.75 or anything like that, but we'll just say, for argument's sake, that my rating is somewhere between 3.5 and 4 stars. So there you go. That is my official review of A Dark and Secret Magic. And finally, the last book that I read in January of 2025 was Return of the Light by Carolyn Edwards. As I mentioned before, this was an anthology of 12 folk tales about the winter solstice. I started it on the 29th of the month and I finished it. I really squeaked it in right at the end on the 31st because I was determined to get this book in January. The genre is folk anthology. The date it got published was November 2005, which so surprised me because I've also been seeing it advertised a lot of places now. I thought it was a newer release. I really did, because I've been seeing a lot of people on Instagram reading it as well. It had 192 pages. I read it in its paperback format. I did enjoy it. I would recommend it to a friend. I recommend it to all of you. I think books like this are so fascinating from a cultural perspective. And would I like a series of this book? Absolutely. I would love to find more books from this author, like the collections of folk tales. What did I like most about this book? I enjoyed the concept, just the inherent concept of a collection of folk tales regarding the winter solstice. I also loved the connections between the cultures. I love how so many cultures across the entire globe have very similarly structured stories about what is going on the shortest day of the year. That was so fascinating to me from like a human anthropological level of, was it because there is some proto story at the very beginnings of civilization that then as people migrated and spread out, it shifted and changed? Or did humans just across the planet all come up with similar stories on their own? I don't know. I think it's so fun. I think it's so fascinating. I also really enjoyed that it was a quick read. I sat down, even though it took me 2 days to read it, I only think it took me like 3 hours total to read it. What did I like least about the book? There wasn't actually a lot that I'm going to be able to pull for About You for my sophomore book, but I still found it highly enjoyable. Also, this is such a small nitpick, but I did find that it had odd organization. The book is broken up into categories of like, these are all the stories that involve a thief, and these are all the stories that involve relinquishing or resignation or something like that. But I felt like almost every single story involved a thief across all the categories, and the stories that were in resignation, I would finish one and be like, how is that involving being resigned to something? I wasn't completely convinced by the categories that the author chose to organize her stories in. Cover design, I only gave it 2 stars because even though the cover it looks like it's a piece of art, a painting or a drawing or something, there's so much happening, but the color palette is so homogenous that it's actually hard to tell what is happening. And so I kind of don't even look at the cover. I kind of don't acknowledge it, which again, that's a me thing. I'm not sure that's a critique of the cover artist. I also didn't give a rating for, well, classically, as I have not been doing, I didn't give it a rating for story and plot or for characters because again, it's not nonfiction, but it's an anthology. There are way too many characters. There's way too many stories and plots to actually consider. And then I also didn't give it a rating for writing style just because this is a collection of folk tales that this author is just writing down. And yes, she's writing it in her own voice. And yes, she was able to communicate it in a way that was enjoyable and readable, which I guess if you were to force me to give it a rating, I would give it around 3 to 4 stars. But again, it just felt like it wasn't applicable. This is an author taking other stories and like sharing them in this one collection. I don't know. It just felt not appropriate to try and determine a writing style rating off of that. And then finally, my notes are just that I definitely want to read more folk history, which I think is also a great indication of how this story communicates with the audience because it left me wanting more. So that is my last full spread for the books that I read in January, but there are still a few more tasks to do in this journal. Let's flip all the way to the back. Okay, monthly roundup. Add a photo of your favorite book each month. Okay, this is something I'm gonna have to do in February because like I said, I don't have a printer. So I'm gonna have to pick my favorite book and paste it in here. So I will do that in next week's video, or next month's video. Okay, this is a big one. Book of the year. For January, what was the book I most enjoyed? Look, I'm going to be so for real. At the start of this month, I really thought it was going to be Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands, but I'm going to be incredibly self-serving and I'm going to say it's Adasm because that's just the truth. I really enjoyed Dark and Secret Magic, and it was just so special listening to it again. And that does feel so self-serving, but you know what? I'm going to put it with the understanding that I'm going to call BS on myself if it ends up winning this whole thing. Let me just say that. Oh, well then, if I'm going to do that, why not just put Emily Wilde's? I'm going to do that. I'm going to put Emily Wilde, and then I'm going to do honorable mention Adasm. Map of, was it Otherlands or Outerlands? Whoosh. Otherlands. Otherlands. Okay, I feel better about this because then I won't feel like I'm betraying my own book if I pick it over other books. But this is a good reminder to me that I did like reading Adasm more than I liked reading Emily Wilde. But Adasm, by being my own book, is disqualified from participating in this event. Okay, these are all things that I can fill out at the end of the year. Book log. I still haven't figured out what I'm going to do with these pages. But I think that's it. Yeah, library card, reading challenge. Does anybody know of any good reading challenges? I really want to start participating in them because I'm hoping that'll help amp me up. Let me know down in the comments if you can think of any. Oh, let's look at book bingo. Okay, I did finish a book in one sitting, but I did that last year, but I still counted it. Used something where's a bookmark, joined a book club, read a graphic novel, read poetry, read a book with over 600 pages, met an author. Oh, ho, 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 ho. Listened to an audiobook. We can fill this one in, and we're going to do the first audiobook that I listened to this year, which was Remarkably Creatures. Even though I listened to quite a few audiobooks this month. Sorry for all the notifications my phone is getting. Apparently one of my cats has used their litter box. So what day did I finish Remarkably Bright Creatures? The 19th. 1/19/25. Remarkably. Ah! Shoot. I should have. Oh well. Bright. Creatures. Terrible. That looks so bad. Oh well, whatever. Cried during a book. I also did that this month, but that was also for Remarkably Bright Creatures, and I feel like I can't. I think I did make that rule for myself where I can't double up on a book. Read on a blanket fort. Read a book with less than 100 pages. No, I think all the books I think even the anthology short story had over 100. Liked a book I thought I was going to hate, had a reading date, read outside, done a book swap, and stayed up all night to read. I was reading outside yesterday, but I don't feel like that counts. And also I read a lot in the car, but again, I also don't feel like that counts. So, and by saying reading outside yesterday doesn't count, I mean, that doesn't count for this video. It could count for next month's video. All right, that's it. Speaking of video, I mean, this video has got to be over an hour long. I am desperately, desperately sorry about that. I hope you enjoyed this. This is a very new type of video for me. So if you have any comments or suggestions of different ways I should do it to make it more watchable, please let me know. I'm super open to suggestions, and I will try my best to incorporate them in the February / early March version of this video. But until then, go be happy, go be healthy, and go write.